Welcome to this brief R tutorial on using logical tests to subset vectors and data frames. Now, in the last video, we talked about how logical tests are executed in R, and this video is going to be mostly about just showing you how they can be useful. So the idea is really simple. It's just that logical vectors, or just these vectors of true and false values that we were talking about in the last video, can be used usefully to help us focus on just parts of vectors and data frames. So let's jump into R to show you an example. So let's again load the MT cars data and look at the beginning of it. Now, in an earlier video, we were talking about how to look just at a subset of a vector. So for example, if I want to just look at the first three values of the miles per gallon vector, I can put in brackets a vector of the values that I want to look at, just 1, 2, and 3. And then I can get back these first three values. And then in the last video, we were talking about how to test whether various values in this vector, miles per gallon, were, say, greater than some value. Let's say 20. So we got this big string of true and false values. Now, it turns out that we can use this vector of true and false values in order to subset in the same way that we did previously. So, for example, if I wanted to only look at values that are greater than 20, I could say I want to look at the MPG vector of MT cars, but then in brackets I'm going to put in which values I want to look at. And here I'm just going to use this logical test in order to specify that I only want to see values that are bigger than 20. So when I execute this, I can see all of the miles per gallon, but only for the values that are actually bigger than 20. So that is only in cases where this vector inside the brackets has a value of true. Now, the really cool thing is that we can use this logical test in order to look at whatever vector we want. So for example, in this data set, the names of cars here are row names. The way you can see that is that there's not actually some name of the vector right here. So if I wanted to just get the collection of all of the row names of this data set, I can just type this row names command and then execute it, and I can see all of the names of the cars. Now, the thing that's cool is that these are stored as a vector, just like all of the other information in the data set. So let's say that I wanted to look at the car names for cars that have high miles per gallon. I'm going to say that that means having miles per gallon greater than 20. So again, just I mean, this may be redundant here, but remember that this logical vector, when I execute it, tells me a bunch of true and false values, and then I can use those in order to subset other vectors. So if I put brackets around this, and then I say, you know, I really want to look at row names of MT cars. So just if I, let me just copy and paste this down. If I just execute this bit, I get all of the cars. And then if I put in brackets this logical vector, this is asking R to only tell me the names of cars for which this vector in here is true. Namely, only for cars that have high miles per gallon. So if I execute this, then I get this smaller subset. So these are just the higher mile per gallon cars. And I could change this kind of constant if I wanted to. So I could make it a more stringent test. So I could say, now only show me the cars that have miles per gallon greater than 22, for example. And now we can see that our list is a little bit shorter. So as another example of this, I'm going to load the maps library. And remember that you can install it using this install.packages and then maps command. I've already done that, so I'm not going to execute it. And then load the us.cities data. Now, if I look at the beginning of this data set, I can see that I've actually got about 1,000 observations for these 6 variables, and one of them is population. So one thing that I could be interested in is I just want to look at the cities that have population over some specific value. So this is really exactly like the subsetting that we just did in the empty cars data set. So here, I'm going to say I want to look at the names of cities, but I only want to look at the cities that have population greater than, say, 1 million. So here, let's see. Oh, I misspelled names. So here, when I execute this, this bit is just asking me, or asking R, is a particular observation larger than or smaller than 2 million? And we can see that in this data set, most of the values are actually false. But for the few that are true, it'll keep track of which are true, and then I can examine some other vector based on the values in this logical test. So the kind of take-home message here is that these logical tests can be really useful for isolating specific observations in data frames.